So I just want to show you this quickly. This filming location is not ideal because I am filming in my office, not where I normally film tutorials because of the whole family's home and where people are working and that kind of thing. So this is the cowl I'm working on. So the way it's constructed is that I knitted half the length of the cowl in stripes, and then I did a picot around, and then that's going to tuck in. So that'll become like the lining, if you like. And then I knitted the color work, and then I'm knitting the stripes up here, which will be half of the length of the color work. So the two stripe section will fold in and then be sewn in the middle. So you'll get like a double layer cowl. I finished the color work yesterday, so I've done 5 repeats of the color work. I've done 5 repeats of the color work, and I started with a purple section. I finished with a lavender section, like that. And then I've done purple picot down here and the lavender picot up here, which will look better when I've folded it in. So I wanted this cowl to use 200 grams, 100 grams of each colour. And I actually realised when I got to the halfway point of the stranded colour work that I was probably going to use almost either exactly 200 grams or a bit over. And I decided that was fine. I thought if I go into a third ball, the balls are 50 grams. So I thought if I go into a third ball and it uses 150 grams of each colour, that'll be fine. But I couldn't be thinking about it since I started doing these stripes yesterday, and I did these stripes last night, and I've actually done a third of the stripe section. So I've only got I haven't got that much knitting to do, but I've been thinking about it, and I'm thinking I actually want to take back to here and finish, so that it starts with the purple section and it finishes with the purple section rather than the lavender section, and that should be enough to mean that I stick to below the 200 grams. Also means I've got to unpick some of this because I want the two stripe section to meet in the middle on the inside and then sew them together, but that's not going to work. This will be too long. The other problem I have here is that I don't normally do joggler stripes, but I decided to try it on this one. I started knitting this on the plane going to Spain, and I cast it on at the airport, and I've never really done joggler stripes before because I've not been that bothered about it, but for this one I thought, right, let's have a go at joggler stripes. Anyway, I looked at a couple of videos at the airport, and I chose one and I followed it, and I knitted probably about this section here because that looks okay. And then I got to Spain. I hadn't written down what I did, and the first probably a week or so, maybe even longer, I didn't work on this at all. And when I finally picked it up again, I could not remember which type of joggler stripes I was doing or where I got the information from, which video I watched, because I watched a YouTube tutorial to work out which was best. And so I watched another video which involves moving the beginning of the round 1 stitch every other round, and can you see here I've ended up with this like diagonal line which looks awful, and I'm not happy with it, but I decided to leave it. As I was working on it, I was thinking this looks awful, but because this stripe section seemed to just take me so long when I was knitting it on holiday that I just decided to leave it. So I'm not happy with that. So what I'm actually thinking about doing is taking this whole section out and re-knitting it. So I would take it, I would unpick around here because it's very difficult to unravel from the cast on edge. So I would actually pick up around here, probably this purple section, and then knit it the other way down, which will work fine with stocking stitch. And then I'm thinking about going back here to here and re-knitting all of this. But I still am knitting, but I have been thinking about it a lot since last night, and I've decided that that's what I'm going to do. So I'll show you how I will unpick to unravel a whole section like this. I could just pull the needles out and unravel down and then catch the stitches on the needle when I get down here, but I prefer to put the needle in before I do that, so that I don't have to worry about not being able to catch the stitches. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I need to know where the beginning of my round is, and that's a little bit difficult to work out because my beginning of the round is here I've got to try and follow that line all the way down to here. So actually looking at this, I can tell that that's where the beginning of my round is, here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put this marker in here into the fabric just so I know where the beginning of my round is. Then I'm going to take my needles out. So I've taken my needle out, so these stitches are loose. And then I could just unravel it, but I'm going to try and put the needle into these stitches down here first. And it's quite easy because I'm actually going to go into that last row of purple stitches. So there's a round of purple stitches, and then the round above that, so there's one full round that's just purple, and then the round above that is every other stitch is purple and every other stitch is lavender. So I'm going to try and go into the round that's just purple. And it's a little bit difficult, tricky to do this while I am filming, while I'm looking into the camera. So there, that's the first one. That's the second one. If you go one row up or one row down, it doesn't really matter. So for some of these, every other one, there should be a lavender stitch above. Every other one, there should be a purple stitch above. And when you find, once you find the first leg, it's fairly easy because each stitch has 2 legs, so you basically just go into every other leg. The thing is, the purple ones are quite dark. So you're just going around like that. And it doesn't matter if you occasionally go into the row below or the row above, or, you know, stuff like that. That's fine, you can fix that later, as long as you don't forget to pick up a stitch. If you miss a stitch, that's going to cause more problems. It's useful to have some of these markers handy, or some pieces of yarn threaded onto a tapestry needle, so that if you do miss any of these, if you miss a stitch rather, you can pick it up. If you miss, when you have difficult to talk and do this at the same time. If you get to the point, when you've unraveled everything, if you found that you've missed a stitch, so say there was a stitch here I hadn't picked up, if you have any of these empty ones available, or a piece of yarn with a tapestry needle threaded, you can just thread it through that stitch and secure it till you can work out how to pick it up. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to actually do this off camera because it'll be a bit easier and a bit quicker. And then I'll come back and show you what I've done. Okay, so now I have finished. So the needle goes all the way around from there, all the way around to there. I'm hoping I haven't missed any stitches. It looks okay, but I'll find out when I start unraveling. So then I'm going to start unraveling. Oh, excuse me for knocking the camera. This is not the best setup, but with both my kids at home, people working from home, it's also a Sunday morning, and there's people I can't film normally. If I can't film in the lounge, I normally film in my bedroom, but I can't do that because somebody's in the shower. So I thought that would make too much noise, so that's why I'm doing this in my office. So I'm going to just unravel. You don't need to watch me unravel. I'm going to unravel all this. It's 2 rounds of each colour. I'm actually going to wind it up as I go, but I can't do that without knocking the camera. So I'm going to unravel this till I get back to here, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I have finished unraveling. So you can see now my stitches are on the needle, and I'm just going to go all the way around just to check that I haven't dropped any or missed any. I've got about 200 stitches. Now, one thing that's happened is that here, can you see here how the working yarn actually goes under my needle? So I think that is because, yeah, it's because there is a stitch there that I picked up in the row above. So instead of picking it up in the row I was on, I've actually picked it up in the row above. So that one, that's why that yarn goes through here. Oops, sorry. But that's just one stitch, and I can easily fix that. So what you can do, And also here, there's a few stitches here. So this is where, hang on, this is where the beginning of Miranda's, and the working yarn, purple working yarn, goes from there. So there are a few stitches here that I should have unraveled a bit more. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just, these first few stitches, oh no, hang on, no, that's the stitch there. I thought I hadn't unraveled any of these, but there's another stitch there where I've caught the stitch. Right, let me just put a marker on quickly on my needle. I know I got the marker in the fabric, but I prefer to have one on my needle. So let's just go to that first stitch. So that one I haven't unpicked properly. Hang on, there we go. That one I haven't unpicked properly because the working yarn is coming through that. So now the working yarn comes from there, but it's also caught up here. So sometimes I'll just knit around and try and fix these things, but I don't think I can do that here because the yarn is actually through the stitch. So sometimes you just get the yarn where it's caught under your needle, but it's not actually going through the stitch, and then you can just, it just somehow caught under the needle, so then you can just pull the yarn through and knit as you knit the next round. But here it actually goes through the stitch in, so 3 places, so that's another 4 places I think it might be. So that is another one. So that one is one I haven't actually, I went, put my needle in one round above where I should have done. So that one, and that one is around above. So there you can see it's freed up that. And then there's also one over here, over on the other side. So I'm going to just quickly go around the needle and just slip stitches, because I don't want the stitches to change orientation on the needle. I don't want to twist them. I'm just slipping them purlwise. If you slip them knitwise, you'll be twisting them, and then you'll have to knit them through the back loop on the next round. So do make sure when you're just slipping stitches like this, just to move them from one needle to the other for whatever reason, do make sure that you slip them purlwise. So I'm just going to go around and make sure I haven't missed any stitches, and just fix that stitch over here, which is where I picked up around above. So it was only about 4 stitches where I picked up the wrong round, so that's not too bad. I don't think I've dropped any or missed any, but I'm just going to check it. You don't have to. If everything looked okay and my yarn wasn't caught like that, I probably would have just knitted around, because I got to knit a couple of rounds in this purple anyway. So I probably would have just knitted a couple of rounds and then checked it as I was knitting it. But because the yarn is actually knitted in, you know, through that stitch, I can't knit this round if I wanted to, because I don't have enough. It'd just be too tight and uncomfortable. So I'm just going to quickly slip this around, and then I'm going to carry on with my knitting. So if you're new to this kind of thing, if you haven't unpicked that many rounds, and just pulling the needle out and unraveling down, and then trying to put your needle into all these loose stitches, because I've got 200 stitches. So if the thought of 200 stitches frightens you, which I must admit I don't like the idea of that. If it was just plain stocking stitch, it'd be fine. If it was a thicker yarn and bigger needles, it'd be fine. But because these needles are quite small, which means the stitches are quite small, and because I have the stranded color work, and if you find that one stitch has unraveled several rows down or several stitches, picking it up with the stranded color work is more difficult, because you've got to make sure you pick it up in the pattern. If it's just a single color stocking stitch, then it's fairly easy. Or if it's just a simple stripe pattern in stocking stitch, it's relatively easy. So if you don't want to just pull your needles out and unravel, then the alternative is to put your needles into the row that you want to unravel down to. So you can either do what I did. I pulled my needles out and then put them in by far further down, probably a bit more than that, 30, I think it was by 50, probably about 55 rounds further down. If I pulled the needle out so I could use the same needle I was using to knit with, if you don't want to do that, you can get a spare needle in the same size or smaller. So don't use a bigger size, because you'll stretch the stitches, but you can use a smaller size. So I think this is 3.25 millimeter. If I didn't have that, I could use 3 millimeter. I was too lazy to find another set of needles, so I just pulled it out of the stitches 54 rounds further on, and then I put it in on this round, and then I unraveled it because I knew there was no way that a few stitches were going to unravel 54 stitches and mess up this section. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, just ask below this video. And I'm sorry this filming isn't quite up to my normal standard, but we're just trying to make do for the summer holidays while everyone's home and everyone's working from home.